This episode of The Marketing Show is brought to you by Quest, New Zealand's most respected digital marketing agency, where marketing is made easy.
Welcome to the Quest Marketing Show, a show specifically designed to help marketers learn and succeed. In this episode, you'll meet Kerry Henderson. Kerry's a consultant, but also a previous general manager of PORSE In-Home Childcare. So let's get started. So Kerry, thanks so much for being part of the marketing show today, and we really appreciate your input and participation. I know you're really busy. First of all, just wondered whether you could tell us a little bit about your career path.
I was raised and brought up in Dunedin, in Otago, studied at University of Otago, very fortunate. Came out with a law degree, but wasn't sure if I wanted to be a lawyer, particularly focusing on family and criminal law. Being a young 21, 22-year-old, wasn't sure if I had the emotional skills to be able to deal with some quite full-on issues. So eventually ended up in Wellington, started my first job at the Office of Treaty Settlements, working for the Crown, negotiating historical treaty settlements on behalf of the Crown with iwi and hapu. Great introduction into my career, working for central government. They put in good training, they expect you to work hard, and where I worked there was also a good play hard mentality. And I was fortunate to be able to travel around the country, meeting with iwi hapu and seeing their rohi, their wahi tapu sites, and being able to put together a redress package to try to help for compensate some of the historical grievances that had occurred. A very emotional job, having to have some very high level conversations with lots of kaumātua and kuia and people that have carried grievances for a long time. So I guess I learned a lot of skills around having to have difficult conversations, but having them in a meaningful, positive way to help try to move people forward. So I carried on with my central government experience for 7 to 10 years in Wellington, and met a lovely man, wanted to move up to Hawke's Bay because that's where my family were, and so transitioned up to Hawke's Bay 8-9 years ago now, and managed to find a job at PORSE In-Home Childcare. At that time I was not pregnant, I didn't have any understanding of early childhood. Initially when the word PORSE was spoken I thought it was about animals, and so I did a bit of Googling, thank goodness for Google, and realised it was all about early childhood care and education happening in the home. It's funded and regulated by the Ministry of Education, so I thought my skill set with having all my central government experience would help in a corporate, private environment. I was fortunate at the time, Jenny Yule, the founding owner, had built an amazing business, national business, largest and longest ECE service provider by a stretch, and had built an amazing culture and ability to sell a strong purpose. So I was naturally drawn to the organisation because I've always followed careers and paths where I have to believe in the vision and the mission. Particularly doing treaty settlements, it's hard when you have to get up and be the champion for something around a policy parameter you might not necessarily agree with, but you have to convince the person that this is it. So for me, I always wanted to be able to latch on to the lofty, wider goal to keep me through those hard challenges, and I think PORSE was a natural fit in that sense.
Yeah, so just thinking about PORSE, the way they approached early childhood education was completely different, wasn't
Absolutely.
it? And revolutionary when they launched. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Jen was such a pioneer and true visionary practitioner. She was early childhood trained. She ended up doing some teaching up in Auckland, and this was, back in my day, I'm only 40, but back in my day, I didn't go to an early childhood centre. I went to kindy when I was 3 or 4 years old on my transition to school, and it was whānau raising children, and whānau first, it takes a village to raise a child. Jen saw an increase in the centre-based model, particularly with the longer hours, the bigger group-based settings, and as a mum herself, she just knew something didn't intrinsically feel right with how that was heading into the future, and she thought there must be a better way to do things. So she started PORSE out of a caravan right here in Hawke's Bay in her own backyard, with a whole lot of passion and purpose. She built up the most amazing organisation with offices from Whangarei to Invercargill and everywhere in between.
So when you got involved, how many staff were there in PORSE?
Gosh, there was probably close to 200 staff at that time, over around 7,000 children enrolled, 2,500 educators. So the educators look after the children in their home and they're a contractor. And I think I came in at the peak of the growth. And I think it was fair to say at the peak of the growth, there were a few little speed wobbles, I guess. The ability is when you've created something quite new and niche and you've got a strong vision, a lot of people want to come on board with that. Because it's regulated and funded by government, you also have to make sure you meet the regulatory requirements. So my initial title coming into the organisation was Vision Strategist, and it was the ability to walk alongside Jen as part of the senior leadership team and map out the steps on how to achieve her vision. Because when she saw something, she would go ahead and fire and want to achieve it. And business sense is you make sure it fits within the regulatory environment, you're looking at budget, purpose, plan. And so I sort of created the steps to reach some of those lofty goals.
Right, so she was very much the entrepreneur, visionary,
Absolutely.
and you assisted her with the SOPs and
Yes.
the documentation to make sure whatever direction PORSE went in was going to be a rock solid one.
Absolutely, and the ability, I think, at the time, at the peak growth, there was also the market was starting to pick up on this home-based concept, rather than have your historic silos of play-based, kohanga reo centres and kindies and home-based. Other people were seeing the benefits, particularly for under 3-year-olds in a small home environment. So centres were starting to bring on a home-based arm. Kindies were also expanding their hours. So the market was becoming cross-pollinated with service options, and so it was the ability to start thinking strategically, what does it look like 3, 5, 10 years out, and based on some high-level analysis, where do we want to take the business and what's going to work for us.
If we touch on a little bit beyond PORSE then, obviously your career has progressed to then and has more change
Yes.
in store next year too,
Yes,
I think.
yes.
Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yes, so I finished up my journey with PORSE. So for the last 3 years, I was in the general manager role, looking after all the businesses. Had baby number 2, wanted a bit more family time as well, and there was another change in the business. So I found this amazing role at Business Hawke's Bay, being responsible for program manager for Matariki. And Matariki is Hawke's Bay's regional development plan. Historically, there were 2 plans, and now we've brought them together to make sure that we're addressing social, inclusive growth and sustainability all in one. So I work as part of a project management team at Business Hawke's Bay, and we bring all leaders together across central government, local government, business, iwi, hapu, anchor institutions such as EIT and the Health Board, and we work on regional initiatives to make sure that as a region we are looking after our people and we're looking after our place and our produce, and we're making sure everyone across Hawke's Bay contributes to and benefits from growing a thriving Hawke's Bay.
And you've had good buy-in to that process and good understanding of progress?
I think, like everything, there's change, local government elections, just changes in personnel, but I've seen, particularly in my nearly year here now, a great desire to want to do better, to want to work better. I think we've been lucky in Hawke's Bay. We've had really good economic success over the last year, but our social issues, we're sort of the yin and the yang, I guess, at the end of the spectrum, with organised crime, with meth use, child abuse and protection. We have a real part of society that needs more work. So leaders have recognised that we do need to work together better. Historically, and I noticed this working in central government, you're always quite conscious when you're doing things, what's the impacts on other policies and initiatives, and actually then coming into the regions and saying to central government, you guys work in silos, let the region take more control. We know the people, we know the issues, we know the plans, but unfortunately when you rely on central government funding or ratepayer funding, you've got to look at the spend. So I think that we've got a great bunch of leaders here in Hawke's Bay. They are passionate and they really want to do what's best by Hawke's Bay, and I think that's what's been really heartening. And we're probably one of the only regions where we've truly got a co-governance model where iwi hapu sit around with mayors and help drive the direction at that governance level, and then we feed that back through all the chief executives of the big businesses and local government and central government partners.
It's good to hear. It's really positive.
Yeah, and I think there'll be some really great initiatives coming out over the next year or two.
It's not easy to do, is it?
It's not, no. There's a lot of hooey.
Yeah, management by committee is always complicated, but it's about the strategy, isn't it? Buy-in and support.
Yeah, and so part of my role coming in was taking these 2 strategies that were getting a little bit dusty on the shelf, and the ability to really put something into a dynamic living document, we're calling it now, because central government policies change. The Provincial Growth Fund is a good example. Last election that came in, great to have regional ability to be able to focus on initiatives, but that meant there was a little bit of having to meet things to fit that box of money, and we needed a strategy that goes beyond what central government funding's available and really looking at what the needs are. So we've gone back, we've looked at data, we've looked at workforce plans and where the need is going forward, trying to bring in business hapu iwi aspirations and trying to get something that has that longevity, but also we're nimble and agile enough that we can change with it being a living document.